Test, 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 test. Everyone hear me out there? If for some reason... Oh, mute is on.
Test,
Okay.
test, 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 test.
Okay.
Everyone hear me out there? If for some reason...
Oh, mute is on.
Test,
Okay.
test, 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 test,
Cool.
test, test.
Okay.
Everyone hear?
Okay. So we should be good. Hope everyone can hear me now. Welcome to Agent-Based Modeling, Week 1, the MOOC on the Santa Fe Institute's Complexity Explorer. Hopefully everyone who's watching or will watch this will understand is here for the right class, essentially. And hopefully you've gotten a chance to start going through the first videos, right? So I'm Bill Rand. I'm your instructor for this course. I am a professor of marketing at the Poole College of Management at NC State University. But my background is in computer science. I have a training in computer science. I've written a textbook on agent-based modeling with Uri Walensky that's doing quite well in terms of people seem to like it. We're very fortunate in that respect. And it's being used quite widely. And this course, is meant in many ways to kind of be a complement to that textbook for those of you who don't have someone who is teaching agent-based modeling in your local, wherever you are across the world. This will be the third iteration of this class. The first two went very well, and hopefully this one will as well. And of course, we always are trying to upgrade, improve, kind of change the content to make it as relevant and as fresh as possible. And this year I'll be joined by my new teaching assistant to the course, who's a great researcher who I've gotten to know through a partnership I have with the University of Central Florida. His name's Chanika Gunaratne, and you'll be seeing his name online quite a bit. He's an excellent agent-based modeler, and really kind of fantastic at what he does, so I'm sure he'll be able to answer any questions that you might have as we go through this course. So that's a quick introduction for me and Chanika. We will hopefully be helping you through learning all about agent-based modeling. And I'm not going to spend too much time in this office hour going over what's already in the intro slides where we go over the structure of the course and everything like that. But instead, I kind of like to take a chance to talk about kind of the way the course is set up. But before I get to any of that, and now that we're up and running, I want to make sure that everyone knows that I do treat this as kind of a live event. It is taped for those of you who are not currently able to attend. But if you want to join, and I'll announce every week. I'm going to try and keep it at Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Just because of the fact that is nice because you can get the West Coast people who are just waking up in the United States, but also it's not too late in Europe. That's about as good as I can do. Sorry if any of you are watching from the Asian countries, it is pretty late there. But that's I try and cover as much of the world as possible as I can. But anyway, if you are able to join us live, then you can go ahead and just pop over to youtube.com/BillRand/live, and there is a chat box that will let you ask questions as the office hours are running. So if you have any questions, throw them up there. I encourage you to put them up there at the beginning because usually the way it works is I have a few things to say, and then I'll kind of check to see how the chat is going, and if I see some questions there, I'll answer them. But if not, I'll shut down the stream early just so we don't take up everybody's time. So basically, throw up your question even if I haven't asked for them yet, because that way I will eventually get to them. And unlike raising your hand in the class, hopefully it doesn't distract too much from the rest of what's going on. I do have some prepared questions I kind of researched from the forums and from the email, and I'll be answering those every week as much as possible. So that's the other case. If you can't, for some reason, join us on the live stream, you can always send in a question via email, and I will do my best to endeavor to answer it during the office hours, right? And then you can catch it on the taped office hours later on. That usually I have them posted the same day, so they actually get recorded. If you're following my live stream, you'll see them almost immediately after. But I'll post a link to them on the forums immediately after the class is over. Okay. So that being said, that's the basic. Oh, and one other last thing. There's one other way to kind of ask questions, which is that you can send a email to Complexity Explorer, sorry, to ABM at complexityexplorer.org, and I'll answer them that way. Or you can tweet directly at you can tweet directly at the Complexity Explorer account, which is at intro to ABM, right? So, even if you tweet, I usually check the Twitter feed. I usually don't have time to check the email during the office hours, but the Twitter feed, I do have TweetDeck up and running with the notifications. So if you tweet at me during the office hours, I should be able to catch it really quickly and answer the question that you have on it. Okay. Just checking one last thing real quick to make sure I have all my notes in order, and then we'll kind of get started with the main thing. So, just a quick highlight. Office hours, generally 11 a.m. Daylight time, 11 a.m. Daylight time, 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time during on Thursdays every week is my goal, right? But I will send out an email at the beginning of each week on Mondays that will tell you exactly when it will be, right? So hopefully you can check those out at that point. Then the other thing is to tweet any questions at intro to ABM, and then email abm@complexityexplorer.org. Also, feel free to post them in the forums. Either Chatika or I will be monitoring the forums and the email, and we'll respond to your questions there, but we'll also sometimes use those questions if we feel like those are questions that other people might have during the office hours as well. Okay, so that's it for office hours, just to kind of get you an idea of what we're doing here. I see, and I do see that we have a couple people watching right now, so if you have any questions, let me know as we go forward. Let me talk a little bit about the class. Like, one of the questions I often get right off the bat, people sign up for the class, and then they forget where they signed up for or where the materials are. So one thing I always like to show off, and hopefully I can do this, is the actual main website. Let me just flip it over. So hopefully many of you have figured this out already, but for those who haven't, and it always happens, some people haven't discovered that you need to go to abm.complexityexplorer.org to actually find the actual class itself. And I could pull this up if I give me a few seconds to just tap the right buttons. There we go. Okay. As you can see, there is the main website, right, for this class, and there's the introduction to me and to Chatika down there. And if you click on the lectures button, you will then see the lectures that I posted so far. Now, there are 9 units in the class, really the equivalent of 10 units of content, because Unit 1, as you can see, is quite long, right? But the units will show up as I make them available. The first unit is obviously up completely. Unit 2 should be up end of this week, beginning of next week, right? And in general, the only reason why I'm delaying, like, I could put up all the units already. We've obviously been running this course 3 times. I'm trying to update some of the materials, trying to get some of the videos to look a little bit better, and to answer what's going on. Okay. Okay. So here you go to see what's the first. And the first unit is really just talking about what is agent-based modeling and why should you use it. There is an introduce yourself form that I would encourage you to go in, introduce yourself. These courses, this MOOC really depends, and the quality of the course and the quality of education that you get out of this course is, hope, I've done my part at this point, but the real part of it at this point is that you all should be talking to each other on the discussion forums. I really find that seems to be an important way for you to kind of get the ideas of the course and to really understand what's going on. Now, in general, the way I've structured the course, right, for each unit, there will be 5 subunits, the exception being the first unit, which has 10 subunits, 11 subunits, right? So the idea is that you should, if you want, go through a subunit a day and a weekday and constantly be kept up with the course. And each subunit, generally I've tried to keep to around 10 to 20 minutes of video. The very first one's a little longer than that because Uri Walensky, who co-wrote the textbook with me and is the author of the NetLogo programming language, he did a great introduction, but it's 15 minutes long. So anyways, just to let you know, in general, I'm trying to keep it to about 10 to 20 minutes of video you watch today, right? So it's a bite-sized chunk, watch on your lunch hour, whatever, right? And if you do that, you should be able to keep up with the course, right? So that's the way the course is structured. You will see from time to time there are some quizzes. There usually is a quiz per subunit. At the end, there is a unit exam. There's also a copy of any slides I present at the end. There's some other things along the way, like there is a participant survey I'd like you all to complete. And then next week, there's a project questionnaire that basically gets you started thinking about your project. Now, the big assignment for this class is, in fact, a group project that we're going to do, that you're going to do, right? And the way that group project works is that you're going to build an agent-based model of whatever you want to build it of. And in the end, you will be peer-reviewed as to how successfully you did that, how well you built that model by your peers, right? And essentially, they'll be asked to grade based upon, if you stated this is what you wanted to do, and you did that, then you'll get a good grade, essentially, in the class, right? In order to get the certificate of completion for the class, you have to maintain a 70% level of completion on all the exams and on the group project. Or, sorry, not the group project, the course project. So the project is, sorry about that. The project is one that you will be doing by yourself and completing by the end of the course. And we'll have the project questionnaire is kind of the first thing to kind of start to get you to the point where hopefully you can see what's going on with the course, right? And see what you want to do for your project. And then there will be another assignment in a couple of weeks where you will actually be designing your project in a little more detail. And then the final turn-in for the project will be when you actually turn in the model itself, right? So that's the way the course is structured. And there's a bunch of quizzes along the way. So big thing to take care of, make sure you're going through the videos, roughly 1 subunit per day. There's some lax time built in here and there so that if you get caught behind, you won't be too far behind. Complete the exams at a 70% level or higher, complete all the project parts. You do all that, you're going to be doing fine, okay? So let me see, the one other thing I want to talk about. So obviously it's an agent-based modeling class, right? But there is one thing in particular that we will be talking about particularly throughout the class, which is that we will be discussing NetLogo, right? So NetLogo is the language that we're working at throughout the entire course, right? And NetLogo is probably the most widely used of all the agent-based modeling languages. And it also works very well for this particular course because of the fact that it actually helps you really get up to speed quickly on what's going on with agent-based modeling. So I want to kind of go over now quickly just to show you the NetLogo main page. And if you just type in NetLogo, you'll find it pretty quickly on Google. But it's at ccl.northwestern.edu/netlogo. The newest version is 6.0.4. Small note, and I mentioned this in the introduction to the class, right? The original videos for this class were recorded on a NetLogo version of 5.1.3, I believe. So 6.0.4 it looks and feels different in some respects than the newest version of NetLogo. However, it actually doesn't operate too much differently. And I think at this point I've updated all the videos where it was operating differently. That being said, right, there are, it's going to look a little different, right? So in the end, I highly recommend you work with 6.0.4. So if you hit download NetLogo, you'll get NetLogo 6.0.4, right? If you want to see the old version, I guess it was 5.3.1 I was recording in before, right? If you want to see the older versions, you can download those as well. Part of what I will be doing during this class is actually updating the videos that I haven't yet had a chance to update to the newest editions, right? So once you get that down and installed, and it's a fairly easy install regardless of the machines you're operating on, one of the things I love about NetLogo is that it looks the same pretty much on a Windows as it does on a PC as it does on a Mac, right? So let me show you what it looks like then once we actually have it up and running. Okay, so there is NetLogo itself, and you'll be getting quite used to this interface. It's pretty easy to work with, and one nice thing, and for some reason the screen capture software I use for live streaming doesn't do this very well, but if you go up to the menu bar, you can go to File, Models Library, and you'll see a bunch of models, right? And I can actually add in that models library thing so you can see it. Right. So there is this models library that will get you. And so one thing I might recommend you do, even during this first week, just kind of load a bunch of these models up. Like you don't really have to, let me see, let's find one that actually I kind of know a little about, right? So you don't really have to know what they're doing, right? Just play around with them, right? And one of the nice things about NetLogo is that there's an info tab which will give you a bunch of information about it, so you can kind of read it. Just kind of start to get familiar with the NetLogo interface. And one thing that I highly recommend you do if you really want to get into this and really get a jump start on the course, and I forget somewhere in the next unit or two I recommend doing this, you can go to the NetLogo User's Manual, right, which you can get to from NetLogo itself by going to Help NetLogo User's Manual, right? And now let's see, I need to turn off the windows. Okay, so, and if you go to the NetLogo User's Manual, you'll see right away on the left-hand side, there are some tutorials, right? And so if you really want to start on the, kind of get a jump start on the course, you could start working through these tutorials before you get to the rest of the course. It's not absolutely necessary. I'm going to pretty much go through a lot of the stuff as well, but at times, some of these tutorials, especially if you're someone who learns well from written material, these might be more helpful than my videos at times. So it's up to you really kind of how you're going to take it, but just a quick comment. So, so there's the NetLogo tutorials. By the way, there's a couple other, so when people are starting to think about their projects, one of the common questions I get is, where should I go to look to see if someone has built an agent-based model like what I want to do, right? Well, the first answer is the models library, right? And if I go back to the models library real quick, right, you can see, where is it? I've lost it on my screen. Let's see, file. Okay. Okay. You can see on the models library that at the bottom there's a search bar, right? So if I want to search for something, I can actually search for it right here. So I can type in disease, right? And this will give me all the models related to disease, right? Or I can type in travel. Yeah, trying to get through some. I'm trying to find, oh, traffic. That's the one I was going to type in. Traffic, right? And this will get me all the models related to traffic, right? There's also this button, go to User Communities Model page. So if I click that, it'll actually take me to the NetLogo main website, right? And I gotta click off the right thing. And there's a bunch of models here written by users that have been contributed. And you can kind of just do a search in here, right, for ones. Now, Actually, this is interesting. Klaus Joyce, he's a very well-known agent-based modeler over in Germany. He's contributed a model of traffic law emergence, right, to the models library, right? So it's a great idea. He's actually written books on agent-based modeling, so I'm sure this is probably a pretty well-done model, right? So that's kind of an interesting way to kind of identify other models. There's one other place, well, there's two other places I want to point you to. There's also the Modeling Commons, which is modelingcommons.org. I thought it was, but I couldn't remember for sure. Modeling Commons is another place where it's basically, you can kind of think of it, if those of you are familiar with GitHub or any of the kind of software sharing platforms, it's very similar to those, except it's specifically built for NetLogo, right? So you can go and you can actually see all the models that people have up here. And then let's take one, like this is one of the standard ones, the GIS journal examples, right? You can see what people have, what has been contributed. You can see the code. You can kind of see what they've done along the lines. And there are also places where you can discuss it, right? So this is kind of cool. So you can discuss that particular model. And this is actually run by Reuven Lerner. Reuven Lerner just designed. He was actually a graduate student at the NetLogo lab when I was a postdoc there, the Center for Connected Learning, which produces NetLogo, right? So Reuven did the Modeling Commons kind of as part of his PhD thesis, right? So you can kind of see kind of discussions, and you can discuss models and get answers about specific models. If you need answers, and we'll get into this more when we talk about debugging, you can also go to Stack Overflow for those who know what it is, right? Finally, the one other resource, if you're looking for model ideas, model code, if you go to openabm.com, right, which also maps to fcomsys.net, right, they actually, this is an Asia-based modeling archive that is not specific to NetLogo, but there are a lot of NetLogo pieces of code in it, right? So there's a bunch of code up here. Some of these models are not written in NetLogo, some are. You'll see that you can actually click on the tag to find all the ones that are written in NetLogo if that's what you want. But again, you can search in here, so I can search for traffic, right? And I can find all the models that are written to explore traffic simulations. Okay. So I always get that question right off the bat: where should I find inspiration? How can I figure out if someone has already built my model, et cetera, et cetera? This is kind of a good way to do it, to find the actual code. Of course, if you want to look into the research, I recommend things like Google Scholar and looking through the journals and stuff like that. We can talk more about that if you want. Okay, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover in terms of statements I generally wanted to make. Let's see, I'll flip back over. There's no questions from the forum yet. Let me flip back over to my own feed. So I did have a couple of questions come in. Some of them I've already answered. I had people ask where the lecture materials were and why the rest of the weeks aren't up yet. And the answer to where they are is always going to be abm.complexexplorer.org. The rest of the weeks will be up as we continue to revise the videos and get them up there, right? They'll always be up the week before that week is supposed to start. So like, Unit 2 will be up before the beginning of week 3, which is when that unit's supposed to start, right? Unit 3 will be up before week 4 and so forth, right? But in general, I am trying to update them as we go along and get some new material up there. So that's why they're not all up there right away. If that becomes a problem or anything like that, please let me know. I always love feedback about the class. Are we going too fast, too slow, things like that, right? Another question I had, so now I'm kind of looking through the forum. I was looking through the forum. Is about, so we already started to get into some kind of details about the class that came up, and someone asked. So one question that came up was about downloading NetLogo on the iPad. So NetLogo works on Macs, PCs, and Windows machines and Linux boxes fairly well. It does not work on your mobile devices, right? With a caveat, which I'm about to express. which is because it actually uses the full Java virtual machine and everything like that, and a lot of those are just not set up to start with. That being said, there is a NetLogo version called NetLogo Web. Let me show this to you real quick. Okay, I'm going to bring up that window one more time. Right, okay. So NetLogo Web is essentially a version of NetLogo that runs on the web, right? And it works for, I would say, 80% of what we're going to do in this class, maybe 90 even. The one problem with NetLogo Web is that it doesn't support some of the extensions and some of the sophisticated file outputs and things like that that we're going to read in file inputs, right? So for really advanced models that are going to be using advanced functions from other languages or are going to be using writing files someplace, reading data from someplace, it's going to be a lot harder and maybe impossible to get NetLogo Web to work, right? So that's the basic idea. So you could probably go all the way through, like, I think maybe even through Unit 5, right? So 6 weeks into the course, using nothing but NetLogo Web. But there are some stuff in like Unit 6 and Unit 7 where we'll be doing some file output and processing that would require you to use, where you couldn't do it very easily in NetLogo Web, okay? So that's a quick question. So you can run NetLogo Web from your iPad, right? It works perfectly okay. So if that's your preferred way of interacting with this class, that will work. Okay, whoops, didn't put that away. Let's turn this off, turn the camera back on. So, okay, one other question. So one question that came up is, what is the difference between agent-based modeling and multi-agent systems? This came up in the class, right? And we will get into this. In fact, I think we do discuss this, but we don't discuss it until almost the very end of the class. There's been a couple of answers up there before, right? And I think some of them are very accurate. Actually, I'm going to like one of them right now because I think it's very well done. Agent-based model, I think my big difference that I like to think about it from is the point of view of the teleological goals, right? So multi-agent systems are designed to achieve a particular goal, right? So the basic idea is that a multi-agent system, you want it to do something. So for instance, I have friends who work with economic agents, right? And they want to build agents that make the most profit given the possible options of buying and selling at auctions that they have available to them, right? That is kind of saying there is an optimization goal at hand, right? The goal is to achieve this maximal profit, right? So that's multi-agent systems. Agent-based modeling, the goal is generally descriptive rather than optimizing, right? And so an agent-based model, rather than trying to build an agent who achieves the maximum amount of profit, we're often trying to build an agent who simulates the patterns of the stock market, right? And so the two fields are related. In fact, there is a conference every year called the Autonomous Agents and Multi-Agent Systems Conference, in which you will see both presentations on multi-agent systems and agent-based modeling, right? And the distinction between the two is blurry at times, depending upon certain instances. There are models that are clearly just agent-based models and models that and systems that are multi-agent systems, but they are not that different from but there are places where they are closer to each other, right? So that's how I would define the difference, right? So basically, I usually like to think about why are you building the system or the model, right? Are you building the system or a model to control a system, right? Or are you building it to describe a system? If you're building it to control a system, then you're more in the multi-agent system space. If you're building it to describe a system, then you're probably more in the agent-based modeling space. There was a similar question, actually. What is the difference between multi-agent systems and multi-robot systems? How to distinguish between the systems? Well, we're not, I mean, we will allude to multi-agent systems and multi-robot systems. We're not going to talk about either one in this course in detail. I think the biggest difference between those two terms generally has to do with multi-agent systems are usually referring to virtual systems, and multi-robot systems are referring to physical systems. So multi-agent systems are systems where the agents are not attached to a physical robot, whereas multi-robot systems, they are attached to a physical robot at some point. Okay. Another question that came up in the office hours is how to change the population, the segregation model. And it claims that in one of the things it didn't show up. Let me check that real quick. Let's play around with that. So we can, one of the beautiful things about working with an actual simulation environment is that I can bring up the models and just look at them. Okay, so let's see. Let's go to segregation. Exactly here. File models library. Okay, so this is the standard segregation model. So what they were saying is that in one of the ones, yeah, okay, I know what they're saying. So in an earlier version of NetLogo, it was possible to just kind of set the population level of the segregation model, right? You could just say, I want 2,000. But in the newest versions, it's then done by a density slider. So it's 95% of the space available. So as you can see, there's 2461 agents available. So if I want to set the population to 95%, I need to lower the density. And eventually, if I lower it far enough, I can get to, and the goal on the forum is they're trying to get to exactly 2,000. So I'm not quite there. So there you go. I can get to 1976, pretty close to 2,000. Actually, I can get to 2002. So there are different ways to do it. Now, if you want to change the maximum, so even here, if I set it to 99%, right, the maximum I get is 2567. If I want to do more than that, I'd actually have to make the world bigger, right? And you can do that by right-clicking on the world, hitting Edit, and then, for instance, changing how big the world is in one dimension. Of course, don't worry if you don't quite get what I'm doing right now, because we'll talk all about this in the lectures as we go on later on, right? But now I can get up to 10,000. So it's a quick question about, good question. The models change over time, so the videos change over time, so some of the documentation. And that's from the field guide to NetLogo, which is a different version than what we're using in this class. Oh, and here's someone who wants to access one of my papers on using agent-based decision support systems for word-of-mouth programs. How can we access it? Well, fortunately, that's owned by the journal. However, if you go on, there is, one small tip for those of you who are researchers out there. There are preprint archives out there. So I'm pretty sure I have a copy of that paper. That's one of my papers up on SSRN, which is the Social Science Research Network. So if you go up there, you can access it. And kind of explore it right away. And there should be a preprint of the paper. And the preprints generally tend to be very similar to the final published versions. They're just what it looked like before the last round of reviews or the last couple rounds of reviews. Okay. Finally, a question: does NetLogo have the capability to simulate networks like the one shown in lesson 1.5? Oh, that makes me try and figure out what lesson 1.5 was had in it. Social network models. Okay, which one is this? It sometimes helps, by the way, if you kind of give me a little bit of context. Oh, the viral networking model. Yes, that was all done in. Oh, actually, I see what the question is. The question. There's a couple of models here, so I don't know which social network model they're talking about. The very first example, which is the viral marketing example in 1.5, That one was built in NetLogo. So yes, that is easy. That is definitely possible. The one on inferring social networks, that was also built in NetLogo. So that one is definitely possible. And then the one from the paper that was just referenced on decision support network systems for word of mouth, that was not built in NetLogo, but it could be. The only reason I'm hesitating is that we used a particular algorithm to generate the network appropriately. That algorithm does not exist in NetLogo, but you could, for instance, generate the network in another language and then export it to NetLogo. Okay? So let's see. Any other questions coming up? Let me check. I think that's about it for this week. I will, let me turn my camera back on. Other than that, no questions. Okay. Yeah. So other than that, your goal for this week, just to reiterate, go through the subunits. Roughly 1.1 to 1.5 is what you need to get through for this week. Part of that, I'd really like you to complete the participant survey. I try and get a good sense of who the class is every year, try and use that to inform the class, and it's always great. One thing I love to see is I do a participant survey at the beginning and a participant survey at the end, and I always love to see how many people go from saying they're not a programmer at all to saying that they were able to complete the project, right? That's always fantastic. So that's it for now. Good luck with the material, and if you have any questions, let me know. I do believe that next, I have to double check my schedule. You'll see an email from me on Monday. I do believe that next Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, I'll be able to talk to you again. I will actually be in Germany presenting at an agent-based modeling workshop at that time, but that will be 5 p.m. I think my time. So I think I have a spare hour there that I will find a nice cozy room somewhere in Munster, Germany to sit down and live stream at you again. Okay. So thanks everyone for being in the class this term, and good luck with everything. Take care. Bye.